Welcome back, everybody, to Hoops HD. It is the
Woohoo!
first of our regular monthly or no weekly. Yeah, that's
Weekly
going to
shows.
start. It's the first of our weekly Monday night Hoops HD reports here. We're going to be doing this every single Monday night up until championship week. So we've got
It-
a shitload of these ahead of us, I
yeah,
guess.
Chad, did you realize? I didn't realize this until yesterday. We get a bonus Hoops HD report this year. The way the calendar falls, it's a 19 week regular season instead of 18 week.
I'm taking that week off. So
Oh, okay.
I'm your host, Chad Shore, by the way. Got John Titel up next to me down here, up over here. Joey Forza below me. In the corner over there is David Griggs, unfortunately.
Uh,
Did I get
what do you mean,
everybody?
unfortunately? I've
Uh,
brought all my wisdom to the show.
well, so there is no wisdom in your corner of the show, at least. This is our Hoops HD report where we're going to be going over everything that's been going on among the major conferences, not only the five, I guess, six power conferences, but also we're going to hit the other regular multi-bid conferences. One other team at the end of the show here as well. But there's been a lot of games so far this season, Griggs, but there really hasn't been more than a very small handful of good games among the top teams.
Yeah, in general, everybody from the power conferences every way. Generally speaking, there's specific cases that we're going to get into. They tend to like to ease into their season. They don't like to leave home, and it's like they want to get some stuff ironed out, as if two exhibition games and close scrimmages and summer practices aren't enough. So you get a lot of hot garbage the first week. Now there were a lot of good games, uh, but there were a lot of bad ones.
Yeah, there were. And we're going to go ahead and get right into it here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up this screen share here. If we can figure out how to get it to work. It's been a long time since we did one of these for this show here. Let's see. If things worked, you should see the Pac-12 conference showing up on the screen right about now. If it didn't work, then go find a standings page somewhere. But
Yeah.
for those of you that have not been with us in the past, these are the standings pages that we use throughout the regular season, both here on the Hoops HD Report and our Under the Radar shows, and they've got tons of numbers on them. Conference and overall records, D1 records, nets. Everybody's net is one because the nets don't come out to net ratings don't come out till December 4th. Strength of schedule also will come out when the net does. We've got some various other metrics. The KPI metric does not come out until January, I believe. SOR is off of ESPN.com. Joby, you're with
That's
us.
strength of record, in case
Yes.
you want to know what that is. Yes.
Yeah. Joby, the JNG is your ranking, which everyone can find right there on the website. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about it if they're
Well,
new to
the,
the
the
show?
J&G, and now I did fudge one element of the J&G because all teams have played. Hawaii still has not played. They're playing Hawaii Hilo. I have marked in a 1-0 win for Hawaii, so I'm sorry if
I
that
don't know. Big game
or
tomorrow
2-0
night.
win for Hawaii. So that's the one little subtle thing. I don't think it'll changes too much on that. Um, the J&G was created not to assess like Ken Palm and some others to say this team's better than that team. It takes it to another level of which team is more likely to get a bid come March. It's meant to mimic the seed list of the selection committee. That means you're taking into account factors. That's what's called the JNG, nitty gritty factors off the sheet that is before the selection committee and over years and has been refined. And you emphasize certain components, not just scoring margin over strength of schedule. It's how do you do in tier one? How do you do in tier two? These sort of, the break point marks of, 30 for a tier one win, on the road is, or at home, is a real deal. So how teams have done makes a big part of it. At this point in time, there's still a preseason bias baked in a little bit, but as you can see with our number one team that I'll let John Titel gladly talk about, results at this point definitively map and are factored in.
Yeah, real quick, the other stuff that's on the screen here, we have these other what we call it predictive metrics as Ken Palm. That's the BPI from ESPN.com. That's the Sagarin ratings, which are something the NCAA does include on its team sheets. His ratings are not yet out for this season. He hasn't started releasing them yet. Off of Ken Palm's website, we have teams adjusted offense, how good you are offensively, adjusted defense, how good you are defensively, and tempo, how quickly you play. Last two columns are the current ratings as of today, November 13th, for both the AP and the coaches poll. And the last column, which I skipped over here, it's not a thing to steer a boat. It is overall average ranking. That is actually an average that we put together of the net and these other 6 ratings, these 7 rankings. Obviously a lot of ones figured into there right now, but those will balance out once we get all the ratings. Go ahead, Greg.
So
May I add one little quick thing?
Yeah.
It's amazing how you can see the difference between the resume ratings and the predictive ratings as it is. I mean, strength of record and the J&G, which are both resume ratings, are really, I mean, Oregon State exactly the same, USC exactly the same. That's kind of crazy, when you really think about it, how close it is. And then you compare them to, Ken Palm doesn't like Oregon State losing by more, and that sort of thing. So it's very interesting on the predictive versus resume ratings.
Right.
I just find it fascinating that Cal is both slow and bad.
Let's go ahead and we are going to go through all these conferences here. We've got the last 7 days worth of results, so we don't quite go back to the first 2 days of the season up here on the right hand side here. But Titel, the reason I started the Pac-12 was the marquee win, I think, of anybody so far in the country. No offense to James Madison, is what your Arizona Wildcats went to Cameron and did.
It's been a long time since I got to talk about my boys with a number 1 for them in the J&G column. So let me enjoy it. Win of the year so far, in my opinion. 5 points at Cameron Indoor Stadium last Friday. Great balance scoring. All 5 starters within 11 to 14 points. And we had a big double-digit rebound advantage, 45-33 over the Dukies. I have not done the research, but I've been watching this team most of my life. I cannot remember a better regular season non-conference win. Does it make up for losing the 2001 championship game to the Blue Devils in Minneapolis? It does not, but it helps. 3 cupcakes in Tucson this week. We're playing Southern as we speak. Then we play Sparty in Palm Springs on Thanksgiving, another tough test.
Right. And Greg, so as far as the rest of the Pac-12 goes, I don't think we've really seen anybody tested so far. We've seen Cal and Washington both lose home games, and I guess we go back to that Mississippi State Arizona State game, but maybe that's the only other game of note that's happened so far.
Yeah, not from an NCAA bubble standpoint. Montana's a halfway decent Big Sky team. Sacramento State is a horrible Big Sky team. Not a whole lot of testing going on. Essentially, like they like to eat their dessert first. Not that the Pac-12 is unique that way, but I really have a lot of respect for Arizona to go to Duke, and I realize that it's part of a contract, the business side of it, but to play a game like that early is good for the sport, but I think it's good for the programs too. I think it gets you to where you want to be as a team faster when you play a game like that. Even had Arizona not managed to win it, I think they still take way more away from a game like that than blowing a really weak under the radar team into the sun on the first week of the season.
Right. And here you do see the rest of the upcoming schedule. Probably the team of biggest note with noteworthy games would be Utah here. If their Utah team has anything, what they're going to do in their event, starting with Wake, and then following up with potentially a game against Houston and maybe even an LSU or St. John's. If there is something there for Utah this year, this may be the week they're going to show it.
Right. Washington has Xavier. I'm not expecting much out of Washington. Wazoo, Mississippi State. So we're still.
Well, I was trying to focus on a team that might be good, Joby, not on Washington.
Well, okay.
Don't blame me for that comment. Check to the puppet.
Let's go ahead after the Pac-12. Let's jump over to the conference with the other big notable game of the past week. Even though it's let's see if it's even showing up on here. It's not, because it was I guess it was on
opening night.
On opening night, and the opening night games are not there. But Michigan State not showing up on the screen, but they lose in overtime at home to James Madison, and there you see them down on the 11th place now, although still in the top 25 in both polls. Joby.
Yeah, and hey, everybody gets a mulligan. And James Madison well, James Madison has made the top 25. I don't think they're a top 25 team, but let's just, over the course of the season, but they've deserved it to this point without a doubt. Michigan State, everybody gets not everybody, but a lot of teams that are very highly rated at the end of the year, number 1 seeds, had a slip up in November that doesn't get in the way of them making that run to the Final Four. Right now, I'm going to give Michigan State, given everything that's returning, the benefit of the doubt on that and treat them that particular way. I mean, they did, they pasted Southern Indiana like they should in their comeback game. No time to panic yet for Sparty. Plus, we'll talk about them later. JMU proved that they're maybe not a one-trick pony.
Oh, they played a great game. They played 2 great games. I know we're going to get to them later, but I mean, what I took away from that was the discipline and the poise, not so much the athleticism, although it was that, but the execution and the discipline to keep their cool in front of a bonkers Michigan State crowd on opening night. I think we're kind of saying the same thing, Joby. I was more impressed with JMU than I was disappointed in Sparty.
Agreed.
Let's take a look at the rest of the conference here. Besides Michigan State, though, Titel, and there's a couple teams, a couple of games first of all, that showed up in red there as non-conference losses by this league. Notable with Ohio State and Wisconsin both losing at home, albeit to a pair of very good teams in A&M and Tennessee. And I think you want to discuss another team as well.
I don't want to discuss Maryland because they're atrocious. I do want to discuss Northwestern off to a 2-0 start. Home wins over Binghamton and Dayton. They get 3 cupcakes in a row, and then they host Purdue in the conference opener on December 1st. I knew that the senior point guard, Boo Buie, was going to be the star of the show. He's averaging over 21 a game. But it's his backcourt mate, junior shooting guard, Brooks Barnheiser, that's put up some crazy stats. 16 points, 12 boards, 3 steals a game, and 13 of 14 at the free throw line. The only question is, who does his father, Mark, cheer for next month? Because Mark played basketball at, you guessed it, Purdue.
Oh, geez. Greg, speaking of Purdue, by the way, you don't see the Purdue Xavier score on the screen because that game is going on as we record this, although probably over by the time you guys are watching this. We did see Michigan begin the first game of the Gavitt Games with the win at St. John's. Juwan Howard's still not back as head coach, although from what I heard during the broadcast today, he may be coming back sooner rather than later. But Phil Martelli there and leading them to a nice road win over what might be a slightly overrated St. John's team.
Maybe so, but let's pull up Michigan real quick. I have been really impressed, certainly with what they did today on the road in what really was the build up for that game for St. John's was unlike any. I mean, there hasn't been that much anticipation for a home game in years, and I don't want to get too carried away with this, but UNC Asheville is good by Big South standards. Now, you would expect Michigan to win that game, but what impressed me was how they won it and how they played. They knew the opponent. They were prepared, and they would have probably won anyway had they not been prepared, but they dominated the game. They knew you could tell that they had been properly scouted and well coached, which is amazing considering, like you said, Juwan Howard not there.
Yeah, and just for those of you that are new to this show, these are individual team sheets we have up here. The top section has a lot of information right from the other sheet we were looking at, just in a different format. Wins on the left, losses on the right, remaining schedule, which is really key here for this Michigan team because look at this schedule up ahead here. It's very impressive and very tough, Griggs.
Yeah, I wasn't that big on Michigan coming into the year, but I love how they've played. And again, not to get too carried away about UNC Asheville and the Johnnies. These aren't ranked teams, but Michigan has looked really good. I mean, well, what do you all think? They've looked great.
I agree. And Youngstown State could win the Horizon. I mean, it's not like they're not chopped-livered. Yes, it's like UNC Asheville. Michigan should be taking care of business, but they took care of business by 30 points. That's great. St. John's, you say, well, some people did have them in their top 25. They were getting votes, for the top 25. Not saying they are. I still think the Johnnies might be a tournament team. They were a preseason pick by me to do it. So the fact Michigan was able to come in and slow them down 73 because
that's just
runs the floor so well. So that's solid.
this is probably going to come off as a backhanded compliment, but this is a well-coached team when you consider who they play and how they approached each of those three games. I didn't see the Youngstown game or much of it, but like at least Asheville and especially tonight, like they were ready. They knew the Johnnies inside and out.
So look, Ty, let me ask you this here. I look and still at this. I'm just staring at this Michigan schedule here. There's not other than their Eastern Michigan game on December 16th. They're playing. Everybody they're playing is probably predicted to win or be at the top of their leagues, or is a Big Ten opponent.
Well, not Beach.
Long Beach is one of the top teams in the Big West this year. They are. So I think we may be looking at the best strength of schedule in the country at the end of the day. Also here, would not be shocked at least.
It's up there, Chad, and like obviously, if they keep mowing down their opponents, then all the metrics are going to go up too. As you can see from the scores on the left side there, they've been scoring 89 a game in all three, which is fantastic, especially without Coach Howard there. But I'll want to see how their defense does when they have to play a team like Arkansas or North Carolina or at the Ducks. Then we're going to see if Howard's still out. I don't know how their good defense is going to do without him.
Real quick, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Maryland, all the teams we mentioned earlier that did suffer losses this past week. Maryland, a team that we thought might be an NCAA tournament caliber team. Not only did they land against Davidson, they then decided that the third place game didn't matter and didn't even bother showing up until late in the second half against UAB, which is a shame because, Greg, as you said many times, the third place games still count the same as any other game on
They do. And if you were to pull up Maryland's team sheet, you'd see that it counts exactly the same. But Maryland, maybe they are an NCAA tournament team. They definitely weren't an Asheville championship team.
No, here's the schedule. You see a lot of really good games coming up this week with the Gavitt games as well as the Michigan State Duke game coming up tomorrow night as part of the Champions Classic as well. So we've got a lot better games coming up, at least, especially the early part of this week here. And then as we get to the later part here, we're going to get into some of these events.
Indiana, UConn, gotta love that. I mean, just as a headline of that Gavitt game component.
And Rutgers hosting the best team in DC on Saturday. Hosting Howard.
Howard almost pulled off an upset. They came close.
Real quick, Indiana going to Connecticut. If you've been watching Indiana,
that's actually a neutral court game, but yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, okay. Indiana being on the same court with Connecticut, regardless of where it is. We talked about how impressive Michigan looked and how they took care of business. Indiana did not in either of their bye games.
Over to the Big East, the other half of the Gavitt games that are going on, as we mentioned earlier, Big Ten up 1-0 pending the Xavier Purdue result later tonight. But the story is something that happened literally minutes before, even as we were starting the podcast. I was able to do a quick refresh and sneak that score on there, Tytel. Your Penn Quakers knock off Villanova as part of the Big Five Classic. So why don't we start there? Villanova going down.
I thought that Arizona Duke was going to be the highlight of my week, Chad, but apparently I am twice blessed as my Quakers got it done at the Palestra against the mighty Villanova Wildcats. The star of the show, again, I still can't believe it, freshman Tyler Perkins. I can't remember too many freshmen who started for Penn, much less succeeded so well. He had 22 points and 6 boards, 3 of 5 from three-point range against Villanova. He's been putting up 20 a game as a freshman. And he's like the best player on the team. And I don't think we're going to win the Ivy or anything, but it's so nice to see this kid come in as a freshman and like lead from day one.
Yeah, Joby, as far as the rest of the conference, I don't know that anybody's really played a game that makes me turn my head here. So it's just too early to tell.
Except for DePaul. I would hope that you had to turn away from DePaul.
Oh, yeah. I tell you, Chad, a thought on DePaul also. Do you want to throw it out there too?
I mean, if I told you there was only one power conference team in the whole country who started 0-2, would you be able to guess who it is? Coach Tony Stubblefield lost 23 last year. Sadly, he's on pace to surpass it after a pair of single-digit home losses to Purdue, Fort Wayne, and the Beach. I would ordinarily call their Tuesday night opponent, South Dakota, a cupcake, but perhaps it is the Blue Demons who are, in fact, the taste of the month. And the scary part, he's only got 7 guys in his rotation who've even scored a point this year. if they have any serious injuries, they are in serious trouble this year, Jeff.
And I might add, already their resume is in the 300s. When we get to the ACC, we'll see the other candidate for it, but let's start talking Stallings.
We have an award here at Sips HD for the worst power conference team in the nation, DePaul, the early leader.
Even ahead of Cal.
Even ahead of Georgetown. Georgetown at least beat Lemoyne. They couldn't beat Holy Cross, but they beat
Lemoyne by like a drum.
Yeah, I realize it's 3 home bye games. Again, you don't want to get too carried away, but a team that's looked better than I thought they would is Butler. And maybe it's just because they've been, they've been playing around the pace.
Let me see them play somebody first.
And that's where we are. But is there reason to think that they might? Well,
let's talk about what happens Friday night at Michigan State. We may learn a lot more about Butler right then. You see all those other Gavitt games up there. Yeah, that's their only game this week is Butler's game against Michigan State. Griggs, anything else you're looking forward to? We already mentioned the UConn Providence and the UConn Indiana and the Gavitt games, the rest of the Gavitt games that you see on the top there.
2 teams that are sort of limping out of the gate. Is there a sense of? And I know it's early. You don't want to again get carried away, but this Maryland Villanova game, there better be a sense of urgency for both those teams coming into that.
That's actually a good point because these are teams that are both going to be coming into this off of a loss, off of just not looking good so far this year.
Right, yeah.
Put it that way. Let's jump over let's go for the Big 12 next. And we see the majority of this conference is undefeated. Other than
all the points I make are good, Chad. I just want to say that.
Griggs, the one notable loss, not really UCF losing at Miami, that was expected, but West Virginia home loss to Monmouth. Here's King Rice doing it again, being a power conference team.
Yeah, doing it again.
Can't be Metro Atlantic teams, but he's great at being power.
Yeah, he only won 7 games a year ago. He's been up and has Monmouth been all over the map since he's been there. West Virginia, as you may recall, had quite the offseason, and it shows.
Yeah, it does. Tytel, so look at the rest of the league here. How about BYU? Very nice win over San Diego State on Friday night.
Yeah, you always worry about how these teams are going to handle conference realignment, and they're doing it quite well. The easy home win over Houston Christian and the hard home win over the defending national runner-up. It's all due to the bench, though. 42-9 advantage in bench scoring over the Aztecs. They get a couple of cupcakes this week, and then they get ASU in Vegas on Thanksgiving. Tune in if you hate football. And great offensive balance. 7 different guys scoring between 8 and 15 a game. So you can't just lock down one guy. The whole team can score.
Joe, you want to mention a couple other games here as well?
Yeah. We didn't mention it because it happened last Monday. But a marquee game that did happen was UC Kansas State with that loss. Give USC credit. They looked really good in that game. They showed this is why we let off of the Pac-12 along with the Arizona win, getting these nice neutral court win in the case of USC over what I still think is a solid Kansas State game. And then, Oklahoma State.
Almost to Abilene Christian.
Abilene Christian. Take it. Yeah, this isn't the NCAA tournament yet. You're not allowed to lose to Abilene Christian right now. So
Yeah, looking at the upcoming schedule, though, also, Joey, let me stick with you. Tomorrow night, the other half of, besides the Duke-Michigan State game, is Kansas and Kentucky in the Champions Classic. Our first real look at the Kansas Jayhawks team here that is number 1 in all the polls.
And what a beautiful game because, Kentucky's going to bring talent regardless. But usually I'd still give the Jayhawks a huge advantage for that reason. They're bringing talent that may have not merged. And so a Kentucky team that might be good in March, I don't know if they'll be ready. We're going to learn a lot, and we'll get to the SEC later. But Kansas, I'll be surprised if Kansas doesn't handle and take care of business and get a nice win that will look really good towards that number 1 seed they're angling for in March.
And again, I'm glad this game is taking place when it's taking place. That's the Champions Classic, so never mind. Well, I'm still glad it's taking place, but not at Rupp.
No, I'm glad you're glad that the game is taking place. I don't know where we're quite going with
all
this.
my points are good points. I'm just pointing out that the game is not at Rupp.
As far as we're looking
Sounds
ahead here for the rest of the weekend, over the weekend, I think Kansas State, their event is one of the really interesting ones here. They're going to be starting out with Providence, and then they could get Miami after that. Also, Houston gets started off with Utah, and then they could be ending up with. I'm sorry, they start with Towson, but then they could get Utah, and then possibly at LSU or St. John's. So a couple interesting teams to keep an eye on there in their events.
Yeah, and then Chad on Sunday. Look what we've got. It's back. The Battle of the Big Mac Bridge. Northern Kentucky and Cincinnati.
Oh, okay. I had no idea what you were talking about. I don't think anybody is listening to us.
People in Cincinnati know what that is. The two schools are on opposite sides of the river, and the Big Mac Bridge connects them. If Stalika was here, he'd know what it was.
Let's move on to the ACC here. We already talked about.
I made a good point. All my points are good.
We already talked about Duke, but let's talk about the rest of the ACC here. Tytel, where would you like to start off? Maybe the team that's right up top there on the page, at least.
If you're going to put them at number one in your charts, Chad, you're going to put them at number one on my talking points. 3-0 start for Coach Brad Brownell. Home win over Winthrop. Neutral site, 1 possession wins over UAB and Davidson. Good news, rest of the week off. They host Boise State next Sunday. The senior big man, PJ Hall, has been great. 24 points, 7 boards, 2 blocks a game. But he doesn't just do all his damage inside, 40% from behind the arc. And if I can wish a happy early birthday, Coach Brad Brownell will turn 55 on Wednesday, which, as we all know, is a great day for birthdays.
Yeah, Joby, number 2 on that list is Miami. Now, if you look at the end of the day, there's going to be a note there that they beat Florida International on November 13th, 86-80. This game, FIU, I think, had a double-digit lead in the second half, or very close to one.
Yeah, but Miami, I actually think it showed something about Miami that they did get off the canvas, because we've seen some other teams so far not get off that canvas. Clemson, the reason why Clemson didn't play Maryland on either of those games is because Maryland was on the wrong side of UAB and Davidson, as we know. They didn't get off the canvas. Miami did. I'm still a believer in this Miami team. And I think they will continue to challenge in the conference.
Yeah. Griggs, we've got a couple. Looks like we have a handful of pretty bad teams here. Louisville lost at home to Chattanooga. Notre Dame, a home loss to Western Carolina, albeit the Western Carolina team that might be picked to win the SoCon.
Western Carolina, just another big win at Middle Tennessee. Probably a much better win than the one had against Notre Dame. We'll get more into them on Wednesday, but the ACC at the top of the league, it looks like the Final Four, and at the bottom of it, it looks like the bottom half of the Southland. I mean, Louisville, Notre Dame, these are just awful teams. Now, I really if any team surprised me, it was Wake. As far as is underperforming anyways. I still like this Wake team and think that their ceiling is high, and then once they get on track, they're really going to get rolling. But Louisville and Notre Dame are just sinking in the quicksand.
Those two teams are awful. The interesting thing, though, Chad, about the ACC, until Tytel's Arizona Wildcats beat Duke, the conference had gone the longest of all the conferences in the country without a loss. They didn't lose their bye games. And then promptly, Louisville comes in and Notre Dame comes in and does their job. But because of those wins, I'm sorry, Louisville and Notre Dame, you're still behind DePaul.
I wanted a quick note here, Joey. Your Virginia team had a win over Florida 73-70. Tough game, actually.
It was a great. You know what? I leave that game with more confidence than I did even entering it. I'm entering the game. Hey, Virginia's a tournament team, etc. After that game, I go, this is a top 25 team, and the coaches gave Virginia a spot in the top 25 today. And the reason why is because Florida's actually decent.
Good. Yeah.
They're a tournament team. I'm convinced. And with Clayton and Kugel in the backcourt, that's a nice little. The Clayton being the one Patino couldn't muster to come from Iona. But the key was the inside game, and not to get too detailed. Florida early on through the first 5 minutes. Remember how Virginia keeps scores down. They were up 12-4 12 points given up in the first 5 minutes, which is unheard of for Virginia because they were just dominating the middle. And so Tony Bennett decided to go to his bench and bring in this scrawny freshman that a lot of people, including me, thought redshirt was a possibility, named Blake Buchanan. And he came in and proceeded to dominate and scoring 18, just controlling the middle. He was actually outweighed by the Florida front line, but he was getting the balls. It was just remarkable. He's making outside shots. And so Virginia might have found something in Blake Buchanan, the player of the year out of Idaho last year. And so if they can actually have that inside, everybody knows about Reese Beekman. You know, he's an All-American candidate, point. But when you combine that with an inside game as well as the outside shooting that you're going to get from new arrivals, Groves and Rhodey, along with Imac McNeely, all of a sudden you're looking and going, wow, that Virginia team, they might be going places. And we'll see. Virginia plays a tough, you'll see it, it plays a tough out-of-conference schedule. They'll be tested, you know, against teams like Memphis, Wisconsin, et cetera, down the road, and Texas A&M, which we'll talk about in the next conference.
Titel, here's the upcoming schedule in the ACC. Other than the Duke-Michigan State game, maybe the start of some of these events on Saturday and Sunday, is there anything else you're really looking forward to this week, or is it just, you know, kind of a bye games, or to the extent there are good games, it's stuff like Notre Dame playing?
No, Duke, Michigan State tomorrow, coming off a loss for each of them
Yeah.
recently, will be interesting. To some of these, going to go to 2 losses very quickly. Other one I want to point out is not a big game on Saturday, Harvard at BC, but I got to ask Tommy Amaker about it in the Ivy preseason media day because they haven't played each other in like 6, 7, 8 years or so.
They
He did
haven't?
mention that they usually do a secret scrimmage, but that he's glad to have an ACC team, of course, on his schedule.
I thought they had a scheduling agreement. The Beanpot. I thought it was all 4 of them. I didn't realize they hadn't been playing.
They hadn't.
Hockey, the Beanpot.
I know
is,
they do it in hockey, but I thought they
you got
did
the
it. Yeah.
ro- you got the
That's because Harvard beat BC too many times in a row, I have a feeling.
Well, yeah.
a couple other games to note, actually. The Florida State Florida on Friday, a slightly interesting one. Also, keep an eye on this Boise State at Clemson game on Sunday. That could be a sneaky good game as well.
That's a great game,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
Well, and the highlight, let's face it, is tomorrow night. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, that's we should bring in and maybe expand a little bit. I know, both teams facing loss, but these are 2 Final Four teams regardless, because one lost to a fellow potential Final Four team, and the other, as we mentioned in the Big Ten, was just a mere hiccup. So this is going to be classic, great game. Don't let the records fool you, because in March, people are going to look back at this game and say, that's a differentiator between a 1 and a 2 possibly.
Yeah, Duke could be sitting there with 2 losses after tomorrow night and still be Final Four caliber, which is crazy after 3 games.
Because they would have lost the 2
to
other
Arizona and Michigan State. Yeah, exactly. Let's jump
Colgate
over
at
to-
Syracuse is a little interesting from under the radar perspective. Colgate are really.
I
dominant.
got the Raiders in that one.
Yeah. I do.
Let's jump over, Griggs, over to the SEC here.
Okay.
Another conference where we've seen a few losses and maybe a couple of surprising ones, including LSU and Vanderbilt picking up home losses to teams that are not really on anybody's radar.
The Presby over Vanderbilt game was kind of stupefying. I wasn't as big on LSU. They're both pretty shocking. Not just that they lost a home bye game, but like Presby, probably, if not the worst team in the Big South, very close to the bottom. And we weren't really expecting much from Nichols either. At least, well, Rocco probably was, but yeah, 2 really shocking results, but some really good ones too. South Carolina, I wasn't expecting much out of them. They had a really nice win. They're off to a 3-0 start.
Well, let me throw that one over first of all to Titel. I know you want to add a comment on South Carolina.
So I know we've given a lot of love in the past to Angry Frank. Let's give a little love to not so angry Lamont. Coach Paris started 2-0 last week, home win over Upstate, 2-point neutral site win over Vodtech in Charlotte. Quick fun fact: one of the refs that night, Ted Valentine, he's been working D1 games since 1981, and he's still around. They just beat VMI tonight by 10 points. They had to Glendale, Arizona to face DePaul next week because I guess CBS Sports Network needs something to show on the Friday before Thanksgiving at 11:30 p.m. Eastern time. The long range shooting's been red hot, 51% behind the arc, number 3 in the country, and nice offensive ballast. BJ Mack, one of their key transfers, is one of 5 Gamecocks with double-digit scoring this year.
Yeah. And Joby, Texas A&M, nice road win at Ohio State.
Real
Great
nice.
win. I love the balance. We talk about transfers, and Buzz is using his Virginia connections on this one. Because Tyrese Radford, who had an up and down career, but talent wise, always up at Virginia Tech. Obviously we knew he would be producing, and Taylor is another little sneaky move from the state of Virginia as well. Then let's go to Henry Coleman, who I remember national people. He was one of the highest recruited kids coming out, but then didn't get PT at Duke, and put himself in the transfer portal after averaging 0.1, and national people were saying, ha, 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 ha. This just goes to show this is all about his old recruiting ranking. He's proven he's not very good. Well, 21 points against Ohio State for Buzz. Once again, another kid from the state of Virginia. And Henry Coleman might actually be a really good post player for you. And so with all that, I think Buzz has put together some really strong talent that will make a very deep run in the SEC this year. They're a tournament team. Winning at Ohio State does that in and of itself, shows capability. But I think you can expect this team to grow and grow and grow as those transfers come in, as the freshmen develop. This team has a lot of upside, and they're already proving it.
Right. And we saw at the top of the show, Arizona was number 1 in your J&G with the road win at Duke. A&M there at number 4 of the J&G with their road win. Griggs, even above them, though, Tennessee, J&G liked their road win at Wisconsin even more than that. But it was a nice road win.
It was real nice. I mean, the Kohl Center is just it's so hard to go there and win. I know some years they're better than others, and this year, while they're expected to be good, they're not expected to be necessarily protected seed good. But compared to a lot of the other hot garbage and cupcakes that a lot of the teams have played that we've looked at tonight, that was a really, really good win. And if you count the exhibition games, Tennessee now 2-0 on the road against the Big Ten.
I'm going to give you another shout out here, Titel. Mississippi State. While we celebrated Arizona's win, while we celebrated Penn's win over Villanova, they beat Arizona State. So another good Titel moment.
Certainly, Chris Jan's getting it done with defense, only allowing 17% shooting behind the arc. That's 15th best in the nation. Schedule's looking decent. They get North Alabama tomorrow, and they are heading to a neutral site of Mohegan Sun to face Washington State this weekend.
Oh, the Mohegan Sun is back. All right.
Yep, Washington, and then either Rhode Island or Northwestern in the championship game of that event. So Northwestern game against Mississippi State could be a pretty interesting one, actually, on Sunday if we get that game.
Yeah.
Obviously, the premier game this week is the Kentucky-Kansas game, which we mentioned a little bit earlier as well. But Griggs, is there anything else you're really circling on this calendar?
A sense of urgency game between LSU and Dayton, although I don't know if any of them are going to kind of get there.
I think either one of those teams needs to win their conference tournament to get in.
Right.
And we're only the second week of the season. So.
Yeah, Georgia has been a little better than expected. And again, I'm not ready to proclaim them as being good yet, but it'll be interesting to see what they do against Miami.
Okay, fair enough. Joby, let's jump over to the West Coast Conference, where why don't we start with a team that normally is the place to start, is the Gonzaga Bulldogs, who got a bit of a game against Yale on Friday night, but we're able to pull it out.
Yale's good.
And
I'm going to defer to Griggs on his comment. He's right. Yale's good. They're going to compete in a strong Ivy. As hell, should the Ivy be part of our normal rotation? Princeton and Yale was showing good, and Cornell. I mean,
the Ivy has outperformed just about every. I mean, it has.
I mean, really. Yeah, I understand. Columbia should be up for the Stallings Award, not. But in all seriousness, Gonzaga, hey, Gonzaga's schedule's tough. We're going to see how they do. They lost. Yeah, they finally are having. I feel like this though is the first year where Gonzaga has to show me if they reload as opposed to rebuild. This is going to be, because Timmy was such a big part. Such a big part of that program's history, and we're going to see how the pieces all come together at Gonzaga. Hey, Fuse proven over the years he's able to do it. So you got to give him the benefit of the doubt. But this Gonzaga team, I am more intrigued in learning about than the ones in the past, which were preseason 1 and 2.
Hey, Griggs, the team I cannot figure out is the St. Mary's Gales, who took care of New Mexico on Thursday night.
Right.
We're starting to pull away from Weber State last night, and then the wheels fell off, and they end up losing at home to a Big Sky team.
Yeah. Now Weber State is good, and I don't think that they would, in a best of 7 series, they'd probably lose 4 games to 1 on their best day. So I don't want to say that they're as good as St. Mary's or that it wasn't a surprise, but Weber is really good. Pretty much the consensus Big Sky preseason favorites, and they have some really talented players. But yeah, St. Mary's just went ice cold with about 7 minutes left to go in the game after not blowing them out, but not really sweating up until that point either. It never really felt like until that point that St. Mary's wasn't in control. One of the things that I might think might be the problem is the camera work at these games must be very distracting for St. Mary's, because it's distracting the hell out of me as a viewer. Their clock was counting up at one point instead of down. With the graphics, I guess somebody got that mixed up. And as I like to say, it's like you're actually at the game. They've created that experience of actually being there with a really crappy ticket.
It's Titel. The best record in this conference right now belongs to Portland on the strength of an 89-72 win Wednesday over Lewis and Clark. I guess it was 5-on-2.
2 for 1.
Yes, give him double credit for that. Coach Shanti Leggins, he only won 14 games last year. He's already more than 20% of the way back there. 3-0 start. He also beat Long Beach and UCR. Home cupcake Wednesday, then head to Nevada on Saturday. 3-point shooting, ugly, frankly, 26% behind the arc. Fortunately, he has not one but 2 Tylers, Harris and Robertson, combining for 32 points, 14 boards, 9 assists a game. So if you have any transfers named Tyler, send them to the Northwest, please.
Yeah, here is the upcoming schedule. The games obviously is to look at St. Mary's in their event, where they're going to be starting with San Diego State. Then they could get Xavier in the championship game. That is, other than that, looking into Monday with Gonzaga out in the Maui. Is it the Maui that they're at? Yeah. The rest of the I don't know if there's anything else worth watching here, honestly, at this point. But so let's find another league, and Joby, let's go to your favorite conference.
Funny.
The Mountain West Conference, with a lot more red, I think, over here with conference losses than we've seen in any other leagues so far. So
I'm sorry. Is this Wednesday? Was under the radar?
Below the belt.
Yeah. But yeah, this conference sucks. Let's just get that out of the way. And actually, the team that I've always liked and proved it in the tournament last year, San Diego State, was a disappointing loss to BYU, who I do not think is that great a team this year. We got to the Big 12. We didn't talk about BYU a whole lot. So I'm worried in terms of this conference being able to deliver, and their little gamesmanship. As people know, one of the reasons I'm not a fan of it is their metrics are always bloated because of the way they schedule. Got to give them credit for that to be able to do it. But one thing that helps your metrics if be bloated is you actually have to win the games. So this is going to actually hurt. This opening week is really going to hurt them. Losses to Delaware by Air Force. I know that sounds silly. That's a really bad loss for the conference as a whole. Southern
and it was a true road game at Delaware, so I got to give Air Force credit for traveling out there at least.
But yeah, give them credit on that. But Southern, who might win the SWAC, but there's still going to be a net team in the 200s at best. And so this week was a very bad week for the Mountain West on their getting multiple bids because that's what they need. They need Nevada to beat a Boise State's still out there as they've started off well, but they need to have Nevada beat Boise State, who's a tournament team, to get Nevada to be a tournament team. That might not be the case this year.
Nevada did pick up the one nice win at Washington, although Washington probably towards the bottom of the Pac-12. Titel, what about Colorado State off to a 2-0 start?
Looking good. They beat La Tech and Wright State. They got a couple cupcakes this week. Then they play BC in a neutral site game in Kansas City the afternoon before Thanksgiving. Offense has just been unstoppable. 69% inside the arc, 87% at the free throw line, are both top 15 in the nation. I still don't know if they have any bench scoring, but to be honest, it might not matter. 4 senior starters, each scoring 15 to 19 a game, including point guard Isaiah Stevens, leading the nation, 12 assists a game. I know it's early, but double digits. Amazing. Coach Nico Medved lost 18 games last year. It looks like he might have turned things around this year.
And who do they play tomorrow night?
A little cupcake called Northern Colorado.
And Griggs, what type of game is that?
Oh, that is a front range game.
One of our favorite mythical
And we
conferences.
at Hoops HD love the front range.
We absolutely love the front range. In fact,
Yes.
let's digress here for a second. Here's our front range standings.
Yes.
Nobody's played a game yet.
Yeah.
But Griggs, anything else you're looking forward to in the Mountain West Conference as we bring that back up on the screen for this?
I'm just, well, again, Tim Miles will be coaching basketball again this week. You should always stop what you're doing and turn that on when it happens. On Sunday, we don't even know who they're playing. That's how scared people are.
Hampton,
we
Kent,
just-
Missouri State, or Gulf Coast. There it is.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Monday, Sunday, yeah.
Yeah.
TBA. Actually, the event they're in, they don't know if they're gonna play Saturday or Sunday, but that game will be Norfolk State or Fordham, depending on what side of the bracket they're in. That's why.
It's the one team that's jumped out. Well, 2 of them, Boise State and Colorado State. But yeah, I'm not quite as much as down on this league as Joey probably is, but it's looking a little rough this year. Not as rough as the league that I think we're going to next.
Well, Griggs, I'm actually disappointed for you when I asked you what games you're looking forward to. What your answer should have been, had you answered it correctly,
Oh, the Beehive game.
was Southern Utah State tomorrow night in the Beehive
In the
Conference.
Beehive, yes, yeah. How could I forget? Oh,
I thought you were going to ask him about Tim Miles taking on all comers
That too,
in the
probably.
San Jose versus TBA.
Joby, what about the American Conference, which may start and end with a little team known as Florida Atlantic? Maybe
Well-
go to Memphis too, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean,
Start
Florida
Memphis is
there.
Atlantic-
good.
well-
Memphis is good. Yeah.
Well, and we also have future ACC member SMU, leading the way. Because Texas does touch the Atlantic coast, if you really think about it. Yeah, but yeah, Florida Atlantic, their season, quote unquote, hasn't begun. They beat Loyola Chicago, great, but FAU returning the core of their team. This script has not been written yet, and I am looking forward to seeing if they can repeat on that script.
One of the things about FAU, if you pull them up, is while they haven't lifted any super heavyweight yet, they certainly went all out with how they scheduled. Texas A&M, Illinois.
Potentially Texas A&M.
Great schedule
Yeah.
for them, by the way. I love that Liberty call because Liberty's going to be approaching. They're good this year, and they're going to have over 25 wins this year.
Yeah.
And nice to
But-
have that offense made.
But they should be a lot more tested this year than they were last year. And last year they did pretty good.
Memphis, you mentioned, had the nice one over Missouri. Titel, what about Wichita State?
So Coach Paul Mills, he won 30 games last year at Oral Roberts. He's trying very hard to do it again this year in his new city of Wichita. 3-0 start, home wins over Lipscomb, Western Kentucky, and some school called Friends. They do have a couple games ahead before hosting Richmond on November 29th. I really thought they were a year away because you know how I like first-year coaches, but they also only have 2 seniors on the roster. What they do have, however, a pair of 6'11" big men who are averaging 10 boards a game or more, Kenny Poto and Quincy Ballard. Perimeter defense has also saved the day, 16% allowed behind the arc, number 10 in the nation.
Here's the upcoming schedule. Joby, if SMU's for real, tomorrow
Yeah.
night they're hosting A&M.
Yeah, that hopefully will not be a showdown of the ACC SEC challenge next year, because that would give the SEC a 1-0 lead, very with a road win. So let's hope that doesn't happen from an ACC perspective. A&M's great, as I say. I'm a big believer. SMU, get ready to find out what real basketball is like.
Yeah, we're not much more than we're going to see because we got a bunch of bye games for Florida Atlantic and Memphis this week. One more league to get to here though, Griggs. It is the Atlantic 10. We had relegated this conference off of the Hoops HD report down to under the radar last season. We thought we'd bring them back up to start the year, and as you can see by their J&G ratings already, maybe we made a mistake.
Well, they're holding serve in the bye games. They don't really have that much of a marquee win yet. I have
Fordham lost a bye game. St. Bonaventure. These were two teams that were supposed to be at the top, and they both lost bye games. So I wouldn't call that holding serve. I'd call that failing.
They beat Maryland. Davidson beat Maryland.
Davidson has been impressive going down. Like, they had a good showing down in Asheville, at least with the game against Maryland, and I thought they played pretty well in their second game. But if I'm going to sing the praises of anyone, it's my preseason pick to win the league, and that's Duquesne. They handled a pretty good College of Charleston team. I know that's not something to get too excited about, but they beat them rather decisively. They're off to a 3-0 start. I really think that Keith Dambrot's got a really good team, at least by A10 standards, in the league. So if you're looking for something to sort of have a feel-good story about, it's that. But not a whole lot of signature wins that I think are going that I think are going to sparkle on anyone's resumes come March, even though that they've, for the most part, handled their business.
Yeah, well, again, Fordham lost at home, St. Bonaventure lost at home, VCU lost at home on opening day to was it McNeese State? Titel, St. Louis.
One team who hasn't lost, Chad.
Okay.
Home wins over Southern Indiana, Illinois State, and Lincoln out of Missouri. They do a couple more cupcakes, and they host Utah State on November 28th. But let's give a shout out to Coach Travis Ford. He's on pace for his 7th straight winning season. There are not a ton of coaches outside the Power Conference who can say that. And he's doing it with a trio of scorers scoring over 15 a game: Terrence Hargrove, Sincere Parker, and Gibson Jimerson. And if I can make us all feel really old for a second, one of their starting guards, Larry Hughes Jr., you might recall his father, Larry Sr., was an NBA lottery pick 25 years ago.
Oh, my God.
Jeez.
Out of this conference, right?
Well, out of Conference USA.
Yeah, but out of the conference the school is now.
Yeah, but here's the upcoming schedule. Maybe circle this game here Wednesday night, Princeton at Duquesne. That might be.
That's a great one.
The best game on this entire schedule here, in fact, that we're looking at. But we're not quite done for the night, even though it's all 10 of our leagues, because the James Madison Dukes, on the strength of that overtime win at Michigan State, as followed up by with their double overtime win over who was it?
It was Kent State, yeah.
Kent State, yeah. and a home win over Howard on Sunday. 3-0 start, number 24 in the AP poll here. Titel, is this James Madison team any good, or was it kind of a fluke? And it was a fluke that they got by Kent State with a miracle shot to tie it at the end of regulation.
If you haven't seen the highlight from the Kent State JMU game, you should. It was amazing, the sequence both in regulation and the overtimes. Any win over Michigan State on the road means you're legit, but you asked if it's a fluke. Do I think the Sparty is going to shoot 1 of 20 behind the arc if they play again? Of course not. But when you catch them on that night, you get that to happen.
Michigan State's going to shoot better than 6% from 3-point range over two game stretch. I thought that'd be nice for them to do.
Nobody said not to panic. There you go. Their JMU can shoot, though. 43% behind the arc is top 25 in the nation, and the schedule is very favorable. I don't think they have a top 100 team on the schedule. Maybe not even. Well, South Alabama barely qualifies as a top 150 team. I'm not picking them to go undefeated, but they're going to be favored in most of their games the rest of the year.
Yeah, only game this week is Bradford.
That the J&G right now is in the top 100 is Louisiana. That's the only other one.
Yeah. So you know, Southern Illinois, a decent team, but you know, going to Old Dominion could be a test. But that's one of the things. Like, what is their margin for error now that they have those two road wins? Because Michigan State and Kent State at home might combine for something like over 30 easily. I think over 30 home wins. Between the
They're
two.
not going to get another marquee win here. So they might still need the auto bid, short of doing something like going undefeated against the schedule.
Well, I don't think they need to go undefeated. Like,
Well,
you're going to places.
that TBA in February, by the way, will be against a Mid American Conference team. That it's part of a challenge. They will announce those matchups in January.
Yeah,
And
and
at
you're
this
talking
point,
about
it'd be like an Akron who's
Yeah.
who's going to be on the bubble as well, maybe. So, or at least that 12 seed.
They should get the
Yeah,
best
yeah.
MAC team in that game if they're
Yeah.
still in the first place.
And so if JMU goes through and only has 4 losses, including the conference tournament, I think if you're sitting at whatever that would be, 28-4 at that point, I think it'd be tough to not have them, assuming Michigan State is a 1 or 2 seed.
Well,
It'd be
yeah,
really-
keep in mind that FAU without any win in the same stratosphere as Michigan State got a 9. Their margin for error is a little more than having to go undefeated, and you're talking about you know going to Louisiana, to Southern Miss, two places that are typically really tough to beat at home. And if they get some of those, I mean, they're not going to get the same amount of credit they got for the Michigan State win, but they'll get some. I mean, you know, maybe even 5 or 6 losses. I don't know. Tytel, what do you think? You're the committee guessing expert here. What's their margin for error?
They smell like Charleston last year in terms of like a couple good wins, and then they're gonna beat up on crappy teams in a crappy conference. They might go 30-3 or something. And Charleston was hanging on for dear life at the Entertainment and Sports Arena. I know because I was there, but they got the win in the conference championship game. But if they lost it, I think a lot of people would have said, sorry, too late.
Yeah, I think the difference is Charleston had some decent wins on their home court during their own event. Like they went to Michigan State and won there, and then they won it. I would say that Charleston didn't have an individual win as good as the one at Kent State will probably end up being. I mean, they had a lot of the
North
win at
Carolina
Wilmington
game
was-
that gave people Charleston credit, if you remember last year. And
Yeah.
remember, North Carolina was not number 1, number 2 seed North Carolina. They were should this team even make the tournament, North Carolina? So that
right.
makes it that's and if Michigan State, if unforeseen, they fall apart and they look like North Carolina circa 2022, 23, then JMU doesn't have margin for error, just like Charleston.
Good point.
On that note, we're going to close out the show by going to each of you for any of your final thoughts. I'm going to leave the screen share up for a second, though, and start with you, Tytel.
Following up on 2023 North Carolina, let's start with Armando Bacot, whose 2023-2024 version is looking pretty darn great. He's averaged a double-double each of the past 2 years, picked up right where he left off, 24 points, 17 boards a game this year, leading the nation in rebounding. Unlike the last 4 years, you could try to slow him down in the past and foul him. He was only 66% from the free throw line, 11 of 12 this year, so he's getting it done all over. And he's easily on pace to finish his college career with 2,000 plus points and 1,500 plus rebounds. I know it's because he's played a gazillion games due to the COVID year and stuff. But to give you an idea of how big a deal that is, 5 guys in the past 50 years who've done it. Kenneth Fareed, Tim Duncan, Derek Coleman, Malik Rose, Ralph Sampson. We are talking about an all-time legend.
Naismith. Yeah.
Joby, let me hang back over to you here next, and I'm going to pull up the Mountain West standings for you.
I've done my rant on the Mountain West, but I would like to point out the 2 metrics that often are diametrically opposed are mine and KenPom's, because one is meant to pick the committee and his is meant to pick the projections for individual games. We both agree, if we create seed lists, that this is a 1-bid league. 31, 22. Just pointing out. That'll be all.
You'd at least have a team inside the bubble, though. If Nevada lost the conference tournament, it would be a 2-bid league, would it not?
Yes, but we assume that San Diego State would run it if KenPom were in charge, and Nevada would run it if I were.
Okay. We're going to pull this down now, Griggs, and let you finish out the show.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to finish out. My final thought is a promo. As you know, unless if you're watching this, you're a big enough fan to know that it was a crazy week for a lot of under the radar teams, James Madison in particular, but they weren't the only ones that went out and won big games. Weaver State won a big game. I love what Akron did. They went to South Dakota State and won. So tune in on Wednesday night, Thursday, whenever we get it posted, because we have a lot more to discuss after week one than we probably normally do after week one.
Okay. Yes, that is going to come Wednesday night. We're going to be
Yeah.
recording our first regular season Under the Radar podcast. But as for tonight goes, on behalf of Joby Fortson, David Griggs, and John Teitel, I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us, and we will talk to you again real soon.